Welcome to the Dr. Remina Panjwani Show, where we're optimizing wellness together. I am your host, Dr. Remina. Today's episode is featuring Niko Arapkiles. He is the host of the Just Grow podcast and CEO of Just Grow Visions. Through his communities and live events, he helps entrepreneurs become magnetic by removing subconscious blocks, raising their frequency for good, and building their authentic brand using the Woo plus Do framework so they can elevate their revenue and impact. Let's get started.
Hello, everyone. Welcome again. I am so excited to bring y'all an amazing guest. His name is Niko Arapkiles, and I am so thrilled to have this amazing conversation. Y'all may be familiar with him or not, but let's get started. Let's talk about who you are and how you got here and how you spread your amazing knowledge and experience to the world.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I always enjoy sitting down and have great conversations with great people. And we had a really good conversation the other day, and we're like, all right, it's time for us to record this and then let other people hear our combo too. So again, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, to answer your question, where a lot of my work started was pretty early on. My mom gave me a copy of The Secret when I was 18, when I was playing baseball, and I was actually going through some challenges with baseball mentally. And, my mom has always been there for me in the most loving ways, and she gave me a copy of The Secret, which just implanted some really powerful things for me. And I started applying the things in The Secret to my baseball career after I applied them to just like visualizing seeing like $1 on the ground, and I found it. And I was like, wow, this stuff actually works. And so I started applying it to baseball, and I would imagine myself hitting home runs off the 7 of the scoreboard, and that happened exactly the way I saw it. So it really like planted some seeds. And then it was from there, then I kept on applying it more to a bit. As when I finished baseball, I started applying to business and started really attracting a lot of really cool people into my life, a lot of like powerful clients that I was like in awe of how these people came to my life. But I was just like, wow, every time I had a new reference experience, I was like, wow, this stuff is real. And I think that's the thing that really has helped me understand this stuff, because it can be complex topics, but when you have direct experience, it's kind of hard to not believe it.
Yeah, and what's amazing is something that came naturally to you. Now it's become an entire movement, and you're helping so many people become the best that they can be. Tell us about how that became a following.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because when I started out, like after I graduated college, I just wanted to. When my roommates started doing penny stocks, and that just kind of opened my mind to say like, what's possible out there that you could like not have to work a regular job. And so when I started like looking online, I was just literally looking for things to make money so I didn't have to go work somewhere. And then then I realized that part of like making money online had a lot to do with creating content. And so then I just started creating content because that's what people told me, like create content, and then we'll start building an audience, and then you can sell things to this audience, and that's how you make money. And so I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'll do that. And then the more I kept making content, the more I started enjoying it. And then, I just started learning more about myself, learning more of what I'm passionate about, learning more of what I care about. And, the more that I really think that's, in my opinion, that's content creation can be a real spiritual journey, because it's evolved over the years. And I've it would be really funny to be able to count how much content I put out there, because it's a lot, and it's helped me evolve a lot too, because the more that I speak out, and I make a lot of videos, a lot of YouTube videos, the more I speak out, the more I learn about myself, the more I'm understanding myself. And I also believe that like the more you just put yourself out there, from an energetic standpoint, it gives people more opportunities to gravitate towards you. It's kind of like real estate, right? Internet real estate. And so when I continue to dive deep into myself and get more aligned and regulate my nervous system, then I just have all these pieces of content all over the place that has the opportunity for people to find, and they gravitate towards me. So it's really about continuing to find my message just through creating content, and then people gravitate towards it, and then I get feedback, and it seems to help people out. So I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'll keep making more of it. It seems to be helping people. It seems to be helping myself. It seems like a win-win all the way around. So that's been kind of the journey.
Yeah, and it's evolved into something great. I mean, you have a Netflix documentary on it. You have your own podcast, and you create a community of that movement. And what I want to touch upon is something that we both have talked about in our conversation, and then what we do talk about is you mentioned something very, very crucial, is the spirituality component, the energy component, but also scientifically, it is neuroscience. You talk about neuroplasticity and the real physiological response, as well as the emotional, the psychological, and spiritual. It's all tied back to that neuroplasticity, right? And so for the listeners, we're well versed in it, but just to recap, science basically does show that you have the ability to rewire your neurons, your brain. And it all starts with, well, there's a lot it starts with, of course, right? You got lifestyle, you got the thought, the balance. And if you are dysregulated, it shows up in your nervous system. So I love how you present the woo and the do, and then you throw in how to balance and regulate your nervous system. And then people feel that energetically. And it makes sense because even for the scientific community, the medical community, our bodies are made of positive and negative charges in our cells. Our entire body's filled with it, right? So naturally, as humans, we feel. You may not see it, but you feel. And the more you practice and regulate, the more you pick up and you draw on that community. So I would love for you to elaborate on that and how you use the woo and the do.
Yeah, great points all around. It's pretty interesting how like spirituality and science and just the body and like everything, it just seems like as time progresses, as we become smarter, more evolved human beings, like we're figuring out more stuff. And it's so interesting how so many of these things start adding up and lining up. And even with the Bible too, like that's been a big piece for me lately. It hasn't been my entire life, but it's crazy how like everything is lining up. And it's quite a beautiful journey. But in terms of the woo and the do, it was interesting because when when I first started online, as I was mentioning, is I started doing affiliate marketing, and then I had my own agencies once I got really good at like content creation and generating leads and helping people build their brands and stuff like that. It was great, but I felt like something was missing, and even though I felt like something was missing, I didn't know how to communicate that really. So I just kept going and going and going until eventually I just got so burnt out. And then I just kind of hit a breaking point, and I even had an injury, and then had quote unquote spiritual awakening. And that's a whole another rabbit hole of a story we could get into if you want. But point being is that like once I hit that point, I was like, whoa, like there's definitely something more out there, because I never really thought it. Like whenever I heard people talking about spirituality and all that stuff, I'm just like, what's the big deal? Like, I don't know. I don't understand it. So, but then once I hit that breaking point, like God really started speaking to me, and I was like, wow, like, yeah, something big had been missing. And then that's when I swung all the way back to, more of the woo side. And that's when I was meditating all day. I really got into Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, especially I had my shoulder injury, like literally had nothing to do. And I was just hanging out, and I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll actually read this book and actually apply it. And I started meditating more consistently, more than I ever had. And it made a profound difference. And like you talked about, is regulating my nervous system. Because when I reflect on it, the reason I got burnt out was because my nervous system was just fried. It was absolutely fried. And I had to have a nice reset to like get back to a homeostasis, get back to a place of neutrality, which is absolutely imperative, because if you just keep on taking action over and over and you have a dysregulated nervous system, that's the type of energy that you're going to continue to put out, and then that's what you're going to attract into your life, whether that's business partnerships, friends, family, colleagues, experiences, whatever. It's like if you're operating from that stance, that like scarcity, fear-based, doubtful mindset and energy, that's literally what you're pulling into your life. And that didn't work for me. I can't speak for anybody else, but like that didn't work for me. So I had to calm my nervous system, get that regulated. And then it's interesting because it's like now, like my worlds are converging in a really interesting way, because now we've even started helping people again with their marketing and personal brand. I never thought I would go back to that, but it's interesting because I'm actually very passionate about it, because the thing that was missing is that I was misaligned with myself. And that was the problem. And I feel I see that a lot with people that are like, cool, to try to build a personal brand and their marketing, and they just can't do it. And it's like something's missing because they're not aligned with themselves, and then their nervous system is dysregulated. So that's really what the Woo and Do is all about. Is it's we have a school community where we teach what we call magnetic manifesting, and that's really the thing, is that like it's the magnetic piece of manifesting is bringing in the Woo and the Do, the internal and the external, because when you operate from both instead of just one or the other, that's when things get fun. They get amplified. The process speeds up. The probability that all these things that you want to create actually happens, because just in terms of like marketing and branding, I just like to break it down and simply say it's all about just attracting and nurturing relationships. I mean, that's all it is at scale. So when you can do that and you have a bunch of people in your corner that are rooting for you, or they're your clients, or they're just people in your network, like manifesting actually gets a lot more simple when you can tap into somebody that has a massive network and they can expose you to a whole audience, like it happened like that. And then that's when the synchronicities can come in so much more seamlessly. So I think it's pretty interesting. I at first I wasn't so sure I wanted to, like I said, get back into the marketing aspect, but I think when you do it from a very aligned place, after knowing who you are, removing the blocks, the subconscious energetic blocks, and then you really get clear on that vision, then that's when like you become magnetic, and then it's just a matter of getting your message out to more people, and people just really start gravitating towards it.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. A point you brought up, if you feel comfortable, you said that you went down a spiritual journey yourself. And I think that would be so valuable to hear how that was, if you feel comfortable talking about it, and how it got you to this point. Because as you said, it is naturally, once you go through whatever your pain point, your blocks are, then you could be authentically you and vibrate, and people will gravitate towards that. So if you want to, I greatly appreciate talking about that.
I'm happy to share. It always just opens up a very long conversation. But ultimately what happened is I started diving into the world of plant medicine, which was not something I ever thought of, right? And it was actually
there's so
right
many
after
options out there, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I kind of went to, like, I tell people this, and I even look back and think that I was crazy, but like my first ever plant medicine psychedelic was ayahuasca. Mm-hmm. And that thing cracked me open. And I was actually even having a conversation with a good friend the other night, and like, I don't know if I actually recommend to do that as your first psychedelic. I really don't.
Like, caution everyone, do not do this.
I'm not saying don't do it. I'm not saying do it. I'm saying like really feel into it and do your research and due diligence, and make sure that you're making an aligned decision from an internal place, from your intuition, and really listen to that. But again, this opens up a whole another conversation, because I mean, there's a lot of different aspects to what those kind of things can open you up to, and what they can expose you to. And if you're not at a place where you're ready to receive that, and also more importantly integrate that into the rest of your life, I've just actually even seen people that like it can have harmful effects as well. So just proceed with caution. But here's my take on it as well, and I have a firm belief that with our thoughts, and everything starts from our thoughts. Everything stems from our thoughts, because our thoughts become our feelings become our actions become our habits become our life. And so everything starts with your thoughts. And so what I always say is that like a thought always attracts a like-minded thought. And so that means that at all times we're either spiraling up or we're spiraling down. I mean, how many times have you had a negative thought that just pops in and then you're like, oh man, and then you think about something else and then something else, and all of a sudden you're in a bad mood. And then if you stay stuck in that bad mood long enough, that becomes your personality. And then all of a sudden, like, that's just the way you're living your life. Right? But it goes the flip side too, is like if you think about a positive thought and then you're like, that sparks another positive thought and another thought, and you just like start spiraling up. So I truly believe that's really the case, what it is within our minds. And so the thing that I'll always say is that psychedelics, they amplify and speed up that process. And the more intense a psychedelic is, I truly believe that the quicker those spirals can go. And so if you're not intentional about what you are actually doing with these plant medicines, it can go away very quickly. The thing that really helped me a lot was being intentional and constantly just kind of observing and asking questions when things would come up. And that's what even the shaman shared with us in the beginning. And I think that's something that like really helped me a lot through my journey, because it was like negative like patterns and traumas and things were popping up, and I'm like, oh no, I don't want to think about this. And if I didn't hear what the shaman told me in the beginning, I would have been like, oh no. And then, but instead I'd be like, well, what is this showing me? Why is this coming up? What am I supposed to learn here? And so that's what I talk about, like the integration piece afterwards. Like, I feel like I'm still integrating my ayahuasca ceremony, 3-4 years later. So integration is a huge part of it, because I feel like there are people that get lost in that world where they're just like, they idolize that, which in the Bible, it's like, you can't, like, if you follow the Bible, and I do, it's about not idolizing anything besides God. And so if people are out there idolizing these plant medicines, then I think it's a road that doesn't lead to a great place eventually. Like it can be a great tool. All these are great tools, but if you idolize them and pour into them like they're everything, then that's when I'm just suspect. So I'll pause there.
No, absolutely 100% agree, because, well, first, the medicine has to be calling for you, and you have to have that integration process. You have to be at a point in life where you can deal with that trauma, that response in your body, that cortisol response, right? We briefly talked about, that tells your body and your mind to bring down that shield, right? To bring down that whatever's blocking you to whatever you're trying to manifest or be your authentic self. There's real science to it, there's real spirituality to it, and there's a method, and everyone has their journey, absolutely. And like you said, you're still integrating. And I think we're all humans, we're all spiritual beings, and we all integrate in our own ways. It's a new version of ourselves, and you just have to be open to accept it, right? And sometimes the universe or God or whatever everyone's belief is out there, that it's going to be throwing it at you, but are you opening your eyes to see? Is your nervous system regulated to unshield, to take down all the shadows, right, to come face to face? So I 100% agree to that. And something that you do talk about too, what I would love for you to talk about is, because you have integrated, you've talked through yourself, and I love shamanism too. One of my really close dear friends is a shaman, and that's amazing. There's amazing work to do out there in this world. So I love it. I knew we would vibe.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to take a little further is, with you meet a lot of people, and something you said was, I can read people, and that's because you're so in tune. And when you talk about pain points, I would love for you to guide us, or talk about how do you help navigate other people, because part of what you do is coaching as well, and all the work that you do in yourself helps you get through other people's blockages, and it helps you, I'm sure, too, in another therapeutic relationship too, because I mean, I myself, even though I'm treating people, it's therapeutic to be able to have that help with others. So I imagine you do too. What I wanted to expand on is that how do you find those pain points in people, and how do you help navigate past that with everything that you know and worked through?
Great question. Yeah, it's funny how like I feel like I always will come back to a woo and a do answer, right? So there's more of like the strategical way when you're navigating relationships and conversations, like how do you find those pain points, which I'll get to here in a second. But I think also a really important part is just coming back to more of like the internal work. And so I think it's there's different aspects of it for me, because I think first and foremost, like God has given me a gift to like be able to read people, see people for who they truly are, and just kind of recognize what's going on within them. I'm also always reminded of a quote that you can only go to the depths with someone else as far as you've gone with yourself. And so, I'm on my journey for sure, and I still have plenty of room to grow and learn and uncover more about myself. And at the same time, I have explored myself a fair bit. I spend a good amount of time with myself. I have gone on plenty of solo trips that have been really profound for me. I meditate a lot, and I'm a deep thinker, and I ponder on things, and I dive deep into things too. So I do understand myself at a deep level, and that's why I can understand people as well. And I'd say like one thing that has significantly helped me, it's from this book called The Untethered Soul. It's basically talking about how to be the observer of your life. And a metaphor that really resonated with me that I kind of came up with from that book is, we are not ourselves, which sounds kind of weird. But like, if you think about it, a great metaphor is like we are actually the drone that is like circling around us at all times, just observing us. And so the more that we can step into that viewpoint of ourselves and just simply observing, like, look at this guy, he's on this podcast, he's having some conversation, like it's just like this drone like circling around me right now. That's me. That's the observer. Right. And I think that's what's interesting, because I don't know if you can relate to this, Remina, but like I feel like I've had numerous conversations, and I feel this way, is that like I tend to be able to give other people better advice than I can give myself. Why is that? Well, it's because I'm not as emotionally involved in that person's world. I'm not swirling around in those emotions that are just going all over the place, just as much as I have these emotions going on in my body. So the more that I can just step out and be the observer of myself, I can actually give myself better perspective and better advice. And so it's basically like I'm just practicing that more and more when I'm coaching people. Like I don't have any emotions tied into it, and I can just see it for what it is. And I truly believe that the more that we can just see things for what they are and not get so emotionally attached to them and involved in them, and simply just take a step back and just see it for what it is, that's when we're in a really powerful place. And the best coaches, from my perspective, are the ones that really can just ask questions, that can hear people, that can intuitively read them because of the fact that they've gone to the depths with themselves. So they simply can just get deeper with people just simply by their practice. So that's like the long woo answer to your question, or just like my take on it all. And then from more of like just a tactical standpoint, I've been sharing this a lot. Seems like a lot of people have been asking me lately about like, how do you have such a great network? How are you so connected with other people? I throw events a lot. I have like men's hangouts. I do these dinners. I throw my podcast events. People are always wondering like, how do you know so many people? How do you like meet all these people? And I love people. I love learning about people. I love hearing people's stories. But the one thing I will say, kind of just to again answer your question, is one of the things I always love asking when I'm in conversation with people is, in some fashion or format, it's, what's a challenge that you're facing right now, or how can I help you? What would give you value? Just trying to understand like how I actually can serve them. And usually it comes in the form of like, hey, I'm experiencing this challenge. And then really just from a networking, I feel like this is one of the most powerful networking perspectives, is just learn what the challenge is of this person. And then if it's someone that you really want to build a relationship with, then you take whatever that challenge is and you figure a way on how to help them with that challenge. And for me, it's usually connecting them with someone that can help fulfill that challenge, because then I'm actually killing two birds with one stone. Because if these are both amazing people that I want to build relationships with, if I connect them, then they're going to see me in a more positive light. And I do it in a way where it's like I usually do like some type of three-way interaction. A lot of times it's on text messages or Instagram, and I'll do a group chat, and I'll just like build both parties up and say, these people, this person's amazing, this person's amazing, you guys should connect, and just kind of connect them like that, which just again puts me in a positive light because they just have a great experience. And now they're like, who's this cool guy that's just giving value freely? And then it can evolve from there. Like now I do it in a little bit more leveraged way as I throw events, and then instead of me having to like make all these connections all over the place, I simply just say, hey, I'm throwing this event, I'd love for you to be there, there's some people I want to connect you with, and then relationships just form naturally from that. I honestly don't have to do as much work, and it's just a more leveraged way to do it.
Oh, that's amazing, because that's exactly how it just flows. Something I want to track back on is a lot of the work you do on yourself too. You make time out of your day, but for people that need to get started, I always say start small and find the pockets throughout the day to practice the power of pause. Because even with the power of pause, to even take it further, to be the master connector that you are, you have to build up to be that way. But I just want to, that's amazing. You kept up a practice so strong that you've come this far to even spread it further and bring people together, the master connector way. But I wanted to kind of throw in there that it doesn't just happen overnight, right? You have to be intentional about it. You have to take the power of pause in whatever source of meditation that works for you. It's not everyone sitting in a cave. There's so many different types, whether it's mindfulness, being present, having a conversation with someone, just truly listening with the intention of just listening. And like you said, of having value for the other person too. And I feel like that's beautiful in itself. And it's just being human. So for your pointer, for someone that a lot of the listeners here are seasoned, but what's a piece of advice that you can give for people that may be stuck, that may be looking for the next level of being more intentional, meditate, number one, that part, and then someone who is trying to start? What's another method that you would like to have someone be more intentional and start that habit?
Yeah, great question. I think it always, if your question was, it was kind of two parts almost, but the first part was like if someone's feeling stuck. So I'm big on just being very very truthful and honest with where you currently are at. And what's interesting is that anytime I felt myself a little bit stuck, I take a little bit more of an audit of where my time and my energy is going, and then also what kind of inputs are going into my mind. Are you, and just being truthful and honest, like, are you doing things? Are you indulging in behaviors that are not in your highest good? And I know, for example, like I've been in places where like I kind of fall off and I'm not working out as much, or I'm watching TV, or getting lost in a show or something like that. And it's like, I get it. Like there's a balance that gets to be striked, and it's always depends on the person's situation. Like no one's the same, and you got to figure out what works for you. But that's why we always take clients to what we call a time and energy audit. first and foremost, to figure out like what's the reality of what's going on, where is your time going, and how is that time making you feel. So what we do and how we do this time and energy audit is we'll go on to like create a new Google Calendar, and then basically for a week you just track exactly what you're doing all throughout the week. And that might sound a little tedious, but just coming from an advertiser's background, data can tell you so much, and it can give you so much awareness. And once you have awareness, then it basically just shows you the truth. Like, people lie, numbers don't. And again, coming back to our conversation about like when emotions get involved, sometimes we don't even really recall what's going on. And we're like, we think we know what's going on, but we're just so like wrapped up in our emotions, then it might not be exactly how we remember it. Right. So we do a time and energy audit. And basically what you do is you just track all your whole entire week. And, you can just like come back at the end of the day and like, oh, I was in meetings from this time to this time. Oh, I was scrolling on social media from this time to this time. I was, eating dinner, and just like really get as much clarity on where your time is going. And then what we also do is that we actually color it depending on how it made you feel. So if it made you feel not so good, then I would color it red. If it was something that was adding energy to you, I would color it green. So by the end of the week, your calendar should look like some version of a Christmas chart, and it'll tell you exactly where your time is going, and then if it's making you feel good or not. And then from there, you look at all the red on there, and then you look at it like, how can I start eliminating the stuff that shouldn't be on there? Do I need to delegate it? Can I just simply take it off? Is there like some habits that keep getting me to fall back into these type of addictive behaviors? That's what we realize a lot. And that's eventually we get to the point when we coach people is a lot of times it's about just it's more about managing the downs than feeding the ups. Meaning like a lot of people, like we're all addicts in some capacity, because it's just a game around dopamine and how addicted we are to those dopamine receptors in our brains based on certain things, right? Usually our subconscious patterns. And so, social media, anything like alcohol, drugs, sex, weed, like anything. And it's about identifying those things can make you fall off, because if you do notice that you have patterns when you keep falling into stuff and then you go into numbing yourself because of that, then that is wreaking havoc on everything. And that's just deterring your quality of life and your time and your energy. So if you can start identifying those and start recognizing when those are popping up, and then you just track everything, that's when you can really start making some changes. Even for me, like we have this thing in our coaching company we've just started building out, and we're going to start putting together more of an AI platform with it to make it a lot more seamless. But we basically have these sheets that will just, they're like a mirror. They'll just show you exactly what's going on. And based on your commitments that you want to say every month. So it's like a lot of times it's a lot to do with like your wake up time, how often you're sleeping, how much screen time, how often are you falling into your vices. And it was so interesting because the month of September, I was starting to recognize when I was falling into my vices, social media, staying up late, and I would see how that would make me feel. And then that would have a big impact on what I was thinking and my behaviors. And it was just like really interesting to see all of this data that just basically told me when I was falling off and when I was staying on track. And once you have that type of data, that's when you can get really clear on like, oh, well, I know I don't want to do that stuff anymore. Now I can start making the changes. But until we have that awareness, it's hard to make those changes. And so like all that to be said is like so important to be very aware. And that's why it's important to have someone that can kind of see things. Or now that we have a little bit more of the technology to help you really see everything for exactly what it is, then that's when you can really start making changes for the better.
Well, I definitely think AI is eventually going to take over the world, but I think before that happens, what's very a detail I do want to emphasize a little bit more on is when we talk about the layers of the conscientiousness, when you talk about the deep layers of the mind, that's exactly where what you could lay out what's blocking you. You could figure out what's a gain or a drain. Going back to like the lifestyle habits, how are you eating? What are you Are you scrolling, right? Because that affects everything. Your nervous system, just the way the automatic thoughts that come to your mind. Same thing as food. If you're eating a bunch of processed foods, that's the same type of stress. And then type of people you're surrounded with, and like you said, everything else. So you could either spiral out and not be conscious about it, and so when your mind is running on autopilot, it's just not a good way to go. Or you could flip it, and then once you identify and see it written on the paper, you can't lie about those patterns, and then you have a strategy of where you could rewire your brain, rewire the neurons and the actions, and so forth. So I think that's really cool and very important, because a lot of times, again, it falls into the part of the brain where you're not even realizing it's autopilot. And so you got to rewire that. So absolutely important. Wanted to emphasize on that too. So I know we got to wrap up soon. I definitely want to be cognizant of your time as well. So any final thoughts, any last pieces of advice, or if you want to share, since you can always find some really cool places and journeys to meditate at. Maybe you want to tell us about your favorite meditation trip or whatever. I'll leave it open to you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, this has been a great conversation. Another big thing for me is that where attention goes, energy flows. And
I love that quote, by the way.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. And they've done a lot of studies on it too. Einstein did the double slit test. And basically it was just a test that proved that from a scientific standpoint, where attention goes, energy flows. And so just think about that, like what are you thinking about most of the time? What are your thoughts at? What are you focused on? Because whatever you focus on is going to continue to expand in your life. And so it's interesting because, I'm very conscious of language patterns and what people are saying and the words that they're using, because ultimately as a coach, I'm asking certain questions because I want to hear how people are answering them. And I want to hear what kind of language patterns they're using and what they're saying, because that's ultimately just helping me understand where their focus is. And again, I'll just say it again because it's so important to just reemphasize this point, but like where attention goes, energy flows. And so if I know where your attention is, I know I can basically forecast your future. Right. So it's important to like identify those things and, have the meditation so you can get more aware. But from that point on, it's also a choice on what are you going to focus on. And that's why we're so big on vision. I mean, that's the second aspect we always talk about with the woo and do process is like, yes, there's those subconscious blocks. We want to get really aware of those so we can start diffusing those and relieving those. But from there, it's like, okay, now where are we focusing? What are we focusing on? What kind of, like, who do you want to become? And so that's why I'm so big on vision and constantly focusing on that. Because just like with my baseball story, that's what happened. I would close my eyes every night and every morning as I just woke up, and I would just see myself hitting home runs off the scoreboard. And I would just see that. And most importantly, I would feel that. And so it's absolutely essential. And that's what helped me so much. And then there would be times when I would have trouble like really focusing and remembering the things that I wanted to focus on, which I think is a huge challenge these times, especially as things are getting more distracting these days. We talk about social media, how that really pulls your attention, and it's absolutely wild, like how good people are at pulling your attention and how there's so many people that are trying to pull your attention that it's chaotic. It really is. And so that's why we created a powerful tool called Vision Espresso, and it's basically kind of a meditation, but it's also it's a message from your future self, and it's done in your voice. Again, we use AI for a lot of the stuff that we do, but it's a really cool process because we've tested, literally dozens. We've we started working on this project, almost 3.5 years ago now. And what it started as looks completely different because we've gotten to test with, hundreds of clients at this point to figure out like what process of creating a vision really works. And we've really boiled it down to a really simple and easy process. But really what it comes down to is just making a decision on what it is that you want, how you want your life to turn out and what that really looks like. What does a perfect day look like for you? What is your goals in, let's say, a year from now, 3 years from now? And speaking that out. There's so much power in speaking that vision out. And then also, when you actually hear that back to you, it reminds you of that vision that you spoke out. So it's actually holding you accountable, and it's also keeping your focus on those. So the more that you focus on, the more that it starts to expand. And the more that it starts to expand, then the more you think about it. So it's this self-fulfilling prophecy of what we're talking about. Like, it just helps you keep spiraling up. And so that's a powerful tool. It's called Vision Espresso. And so that's why we built that, because I realized the challenges that came with like actually crafting a vision. Like I would close my eyes and I would visualize and I would have a hard time. And even if I listened to other meditations, it just wasn't the same, because it was just like some guy telling me to focus on my breath. And that's great, but it's a whole different ballgame when it's completely custom to my vision based on the inputs that I gave it of what I spoke out. And then it's also in my voice because it's from my future self. I mean, who has a better interest at heart for you than your future self? Like, they want to meet you, right? So it's a really powerful tool that we've been working on. We're really passionate about it. And it's been a fun thing to do. And it's fun to watch like how people respond when they hear it for the first time, because it usually gives them chills. They're crying, and it's just, it's really powerful. So it's been a huge passion project for us.
I bet. I mean, and you're really getting detailed and really intentional with that future self. So I can imagine it would just give me chills thinking back. Like you said, it's powerful writing it down, saying it out loud to the universe, putting it out there, making yourself accountable, living it, like visualizing it, and then hearing it back. That's a really cool tool. So I'm really excited to see how far this goes, which I'm sure it is and it will. So thank you for sharing that. I kind of want to try it. Want to try it. Let's see. It's like future Remina, huh? So I'm guessing you already did yours too, right? That's awesome.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing too, is that it's like I've been doing it for the last like 3.5 years, because the thing with a vision is that it's never finished.
Yeah.
Like, it's always evolving. And my vision 3.5 years ago when I started it was completely different than it is now. And so that we always recommend our clients update it every quarter, because that's what I've been doing. It's drastically helped, and I feel like it's a huge aspect on why I am where I am, why I've gone to the depths where I've gone with myself, why I'm so clear and I can make quick decisions, because I'm constantly updating my vision, and I'm very clear on where I'm going and who I'm becoming. And because of that, now I know what I want, I know what I don't want, and now I can be more decisive. And that's one of the biggest and most profound traits that I've seen in all super successful people.
Oh, absolutely. And like you said, then the whole where energy goes, it flows. It keeps you on track. It keeps you on the right vibe. Yeah. Absolutely. So, I love it. I really enjoyed talking to you, and I so appreciate you taking time to not only talk to me, but also spreading more of the amazing work you do to everyone else listening to this. So I can't wait. Hopefully another time our paths cross again, and maybe in person or somewhere on social media. I think that'll be great. So I appreciate you so much. So thank you.
I appreciate you. And yeah, if people are listening to this, something that I always really appreciate is, messaging me on social media, or we have a school community as well, and let us know like what you got out of this conversation, because it's always really cool to hear people's revelations from what they hear. And when you actually can communicate that out, it actually helps it sink deeper into your subconscious, and you actually remember it and actually becomes a part of you. And that's what I share a lot about on my YouTube channel. And it's really profound when you can, communicate what you learn to other people, because it sinks deeper and deeper. And then when it's in more of a public platform, like on a YouTube channel or anything like that, then other people can see it. And then they're like, oh, wow, that's what that person got out of it. And I got something different, but that gives me a little bit different perspective. So it's truly like helping out the collective when we share our revelations. And it's just been a really powerful practice for me. So if you are listening to this, I'd love to hear what your revelations was from this amazing conversation that we just had.
Absolutely. Please share how everyone can get a hold of you, and I'll share it in the show notes too. So yes, please share your contact information.
Amazing. So, usually what we do at the end of these too is like we give a little bit of a discount on the Vision Espresso too. So if you did come from this podcast episode, just send us a message and let us know, and we'll give you a little hookup because of you, this amazing conversation.
Amazing. Well, make sure y'all be intentional with not only your thoughts, your time and energy. So we'll leave you with that. Have an amazing, intentional rest of your day, right?
If you enjoyed today's show, share with your friends and family, and of course, subscribe. Thank you so much for your support.